The iPhone 7 for me is something that is a little bit overlooked in the used market. Yes, when it came out, it got rid of the headphone jack, gave us water and dust resistance, and did a bunch of little tweaks to the random shell from the iPhone 6s that made it just a little bit better. But in the used market, most people are either recommending the iPhone 6 or 6s for the price, and in my opinion, the iPhone 7 is one of those phones that's an absolute gem for the money. But we'll get into that. So hey guys, my name is Ryan Thompson with Tech, and this is Should You Still Buy the iPhone 7? Now as you can tell, I'm a little bit fluey, got a bit of a cold, got a bit of a cough, so bear with in this video. One of the things I truly love about the iPhone 7 is its form factor. Yes, I prefer 5.5-inch and 6-inch phones, albeit in the 16:9 form factor, but this small form factor fits a lot of people's needs and is perfect for a lot of people. It is truly difficult to find a phone other than a few Sony flagships that come in a small footprint with the best specs possible. Even the iPhone 7 comes very shy of the iPhone 7 Plus due to the obviously larger battery and the better cameras. But the iPhone 7 is stunning. It's small, it makes a few design tweaks from the iPhone 6s, adding a couple of different colours, namely the shiny black or jet black and matte black or black in Apple's terms, and you don't get that headphone jack, which is annoying, but for me, it's not as annoying as the pricing of the higher and newer versions of the iPhone. Yes, okay, you get an adapter or a dongle in the box, and of course Donglegate is a thing when it comes to Apple products, but I find that you don't really need the headphone jack, or I personally don't need a headphone jack. Yes, it's convenient to have one, and I feel like most phones should have one. I'm not one of those people who are like, yeah, okay, be gone with the headphone jack. However, I don't think it's as big a complaint as something like LG's boot loop issues, or Huawei's boot loop issue, or Snapdragon's 810 issue. Stuff like that is way bigger of an issue than just losing a headphone jack. I mean, you do get a dongle and lightning headphones in the box. For the price, okay, the design isn't incredibly stunning. It's got fairly hefty 2012 level bezels, it's got a fairly thick frame, and the camera bump sticks out more than I'd like. Also, the buttons on the sides are nice and firm, however you don't get a programmable button, which some phones do have of this price, and of course the screen is around 720p. So the overall design and fit and finish from the outside doesn't seem amazing, but it's what's inside that differentiates this phone from the iPhone 6s, its older brother. For me, it is of course that quad-core Apple A10 Fusion chip, because a lot of people will be saying, right, of course there are faster chips on the market, and there are, but gone are the days of Apple putting fairly good chips in their phones and then boosting them with software. These new phones, the iPhone 7, the iPhone 8, the 8 Plus, the 7 Plus, and the 10, all have stunning chips. Of course, we'll get to the iPhone 8 Plus or 8 in a couple of years, but for the iPhone 7, you have a chip that was, at the time, the fastest chip on the market. Okay, it might not be on paper the best, but the way they implemented software, if you go and run a benchmark, the thing is going to destroy anything like a Snapdragon 820, 821, or even something like Exynos's 8890 from Samsung. This coupled with 2GB of RAM, or 3GB if you go for the Plus model, and of course 32, 128 and 256GB of storage is stunning, and if you go with the jet black it's actually 64 as a base model. Of course you don't get microSD expansion, but for me those are some really solid value options when it comes to storage. Now of course you will be paying a few more bucks if you want to get something with more storage, but when you can buy stuff used on eBay, you could get 128GB model for around £400, which isn't bad compared to modern day iPhones. This thing flies through any task that you give it, whether it be watching videos, playing games, anything like that. It's smooth, it's responsive, it's quick, and should be going into the future, and when I say the future I mean 2 or 3 years, because of course it's got that really fast processor. It's got of course 2GB or 3GB of RAM, which in iOS really is alright, and then of course it's got a low end screen. It's a 750p screen, yeah, that's around 720p, and that means that all that horsepower means that it can drive as many frames as possible to the display. And of course if you went with a QHD display or maybe a 4K display, as some Sony phones do have UHD 4K displays, it may chug a little bit, but it's a 720p or around 720p display, meaning that the phone can run faster, giving you faster frames, more responsiveness, and overall more headroom when it comes to the performance. The 750p screen in question is actually quite good in my opinion. It supports a wide range of colours, it's IPS meaning that the colours are very accurate out of the box, and Apple does a great job of actually calibrating the displays before they get sent out. Its viewing angles are also solid due to the fact that it's IPS, and it's very responsive when it comes to the touchscreen. Some might say that it hasn't got the pop or punch of a Samsung display, and some might say that 750p is a little low end when you consider that price, but for me at 326 pixels per inch it's perfectly sharp enough for pretty much anything you throw at it. Maybe apart from VR, that might be a bit difficult. But no, I really do like the fact that they crammed a display with such a relatively low pixel count into a display of this form factor. One, it lowers manufacturing costs and of course degrades almost the spec sheet of the phone, so when you go to sell a used phone it can be cheaper because of course it's not as great a spec as something like a Galaxy S7. What about the cameras? Okay, so this camera on paper isn't hugely different from the iPhone 6s with a faster lens and optical image stabilization, which is nice that you get to see in the smaller version of the iPhone, as this is the first version of the iPhone that allowed OIS in the smaller body, not just the larger body. But you also get to shoot UHD video, which is really nice quality video. You get 720p slow motion at 240 FPS, which isn't quite at iPhone 8's 1080p at 240, but it's certainly not bad. And of course you can produce those live video things, which are like force touch wallpapers, so you 3D press into the screen, which of course this phone has, and it will create some kind of GIF in the background, which is kind of nice if you want that, but it's a bit gimmicky in my opinion. The low light is good with this phone because of course it does have that OIS and that fast lens at f1.8. It also does a spectacular job at stabilizing the video with that OIS, and the way that Apple's implemented its camera technology and camera app means that it's fairly simple, and in my opinion just a little bit too simple of a camera app, but for a lot of people it's going to appeal to the mass market, and that's purely because it's so simple to use, it has many different features, and the things that it does lack are kind of enthusiast level, to which I would say, why are you buying a used iPhone if you're an enthusiast photographer? There are a few things that I don't like about the camera app. One is that you have to change resolutions, which is specifically kind of important for slow motion. That's way back in the settings menu of the entire phone, not something you can access directly from the camera app. And two, I feel like it would be nice if there was a pro mode. Samsung's been doing this for a few years now, where it has a pro mode which allows you to change a bunch of settings, which isn't against Apple's nature because it does actually allow for something that could be reset every time someone opens the camera app, which would be annoying but also would follow Apple's kind of locked in approach. But I'm rambling at this point. I feel like the iPhone 7's camera, its screen and its performance are all great when it comes to being a used phone and a used iPhone at £300 to £400. The one thing that isn't amazing, and especially on paper it's not, but in reality it's not that good, and that is the battery. It's a 1960 mAh battery with no kind of fast charging, no wireless charging of anything of that nature, and of course that's a really small battery. This is a sub 2000 mAh battery. To give you reference, my G2, which is like what, 5 generations old at this point, has a 3000 mAh battery, and that thing had smaller bezels than this iPhone. So of course it's going to be difficult because you've got such a small battery, but also on top of that, Apple, since releasing this phone, has given a statement saying that of course the battery life or battery health, the health of the battery, does significantly correlate to the performance of the phone. And this is something I'll go into in a video that I'm releasing hopefully on Wednesday, but I'm not sure about that yet, so I'll update you nearer the time. And unfortunately it doesn't last that long either. Of course when the battery is brand new it's actually quite a bit better, and this is something I would advocate you go and do if you can when you buy a brand new iPhone, because of course the correlation between performance and battery health. However, I would say that it's just not that big at all, even if you do buy it brand new. And that's a problem because you'll be getting anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours of screen on time, which is something that I can't say is really that good when you can buy phones for half the price that will give you a similar battery performance, which is kind of annoying. Of course, the iPhone 7 doesn't have many features, but it has some good implementations. So of course, it doesn't have a heart rate monitor like something like Samsung's. It doesn't have wireless charging, fast charging, micro SD expansion, and it's only got IP67 water and dust resistance. I only say only because of course the Galaxy S7 has an IP68 in the same age. But what you do get is a really well implemented 3D touch or force touch or haptic feedback system, which I like as kind of a right click. I think it breaks away from the very simple Apple approach. Secondly, you get that force click home button, which is kind of weird and of course led to the fact that you took away the headphone jack because of that, because of the space it takes up in the phone. But I kind of like it. It feels good. It feels like you're pressing into the screen. I prefer it to a button. I don't know why. Of course, it takes that OIS from the bigger boys and puts it into the smaller phone, which I really like as well. It's rapid with some really good performance specifications. And despite not having a headphone jack, it does implement stereo speakers, which is nice. The bottom firing one, which you'd usually see in an iPhone of this age, is kind of like the bass, the mid to lows. And then of course the cool speaker up the top is kind of like the highs, kind of like a tweeter, and it acts as a stereo pair, which I really like. I actually think that this is probably the best approach because it doesn't take up much room on the front, and it does implement something that's better sounding than just a bottom or rear firing speaker. So what do I think of the iPhone 7? Well, with a decent display, really good camera, decent performance specifications, a battery that's a little bit mediocre, but there we go, and some really functional add-ins like the stereo speakers, the 3D touch, that kind of thing. It kind of comes together as a phone that's a really nice budget but also compact option. Something that's small, that offers the performance of the big boys and also performs in the camera department, which is something that we don't tend to see in smaller phones. Like, their cameras, they lack OIS, they lack basic features, which really annoy me. And for £300 to £350 to maybe £400 on the used market, I call this one of the best iPhones you can get for your money. And that's it from me, guys. So I do recommend the iPhone 7 in 2018. I want to thank Jay Brown and Ross Baldwin for supporting me on Patreon. Also follow me on social because it helps me out. We can start a conversation over there as well. Also, please do like, dislike, comment and subscribe based on your feelings, and tell me in the comments again what you think of the iPhone 7 in 2018. Anyway, my name's been Ryan Thomas with Failtech, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.